a quiet home nestled on the edge of a pine forest, lived an extraordinary bobcat named Orion. Rescued as a kitten and raised by a wildlife caretaker, though wild at heart, Orion had adapted to domestic life in stunning ways, revealing a level of intelligence and intuition that often left his human in awe. From adjusting the cabin's thermostat to assisting Elaine's aging golden retriever Cooper with his daily needs, he also could turn on lights, fetch items, and even seemed to understand human emotions, forming a deep bond with Elaine and Cooper. He was a partner, a guardian, and a performer who lived somewhere between the wilderness and the warmth of a home. Could his remarkable abilities change not just one family's life, but our entire understanding of what animals are capable of? This is the story of a bobcat whose intelligence defied measurement, whose compassion knew no bounds, and whose very existence would force us to redraw the lines between wild and domestic instinct and understanding animal and family. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. In a sun-dappled cabin, nestled at the edge of the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas, wildlife rehabilitator Dr. Elaine Foster had created what most would consider an unconventional family. For 15 long years, she dedicated her life to rescuing injured animals, nursing them back to health, and releasing them into their natural habitats. But Orion, a tawny bobcat with distinctive black-tipped ears and intelligent amber eyes, was different from the start. Elaine had found him 6 years prior during a violent spring thunderstorm. A tiny trembling ball of spotted fur abandoned in a hollow log, his umbilical cord still tragically attached. The mother never returned. Perhaps she'd been killed by cruel hunters, or had simply abandoned the runt of her litter. Whatever the heartbreaking reason, Orion was utterly alone in the world, and Elaine, with a surge of compassion, had stepped in. You should have seen him back then. Elaine often recounted to visitors who marveled at the now 30-pound feline lounging regally on her window seat. He fit in the palm of my hand and had to be bottle-fed every 2 hours. Her old golden retriever, Cooper, a gentle soul, had immediately appointed himself as Orion's guardian, meticulously cleaning the kitten's fuzzy face after every meal and curling around him protectively during naps. Now, at 12 years old, with a distinguished graying muzzle, Cooper still treated Orion with the same tender patience, even as their roles had gradually, astonishingly reversed. When skeptical wildlife officials finally came to assess Orion's rehabilitation progress, they delivered devastating news. The bobcat had imprinted too strongly on humans. He would never develop the natural wariness desperately needed to survive in the unforgiving wild. Elaine had secretly been relieved by their pronouncement. By then, Orion had already established himself as something truly special, something that utterly defied ordinary classification. Elaine's neighbor, Frank Wilson, a retired biology professor with a perpetual squint and an encyclopedic knowledge of North American wildlife, had come over one evening, his curiosity piqued to observe Orion. "I've studied wildcats for 40 years. He declared, watching with utter astonishment as Orion methodically stacked wooden blocks in ascending size order. "And I've never in all my years seen anything remotely like this. It's not just learned behavior, he's problem-solving. That's extraordinarily rare, even in the most intelligent domesticated animals." Frank had been the one to jokingly suggest, his eyes twinkling, that Orion's IQ must be around 200, a whimsical quip that inexplicably stuck after Orion began demonstrating abilities that seemed utterly impossible for a creature born wild. On a crisp autumn morning, Elaine sat at her cozy kitchen table, nursing a steaming mug of coffee, while diligently reviewing patient files. As a part-time veterinarian at the local wildlife center, a mountain of paperwork loomed before her, demanding completion before the clock struck noon. Cooper, her faithful companion, snored softly from his plush bed in the corner. occasional dream whimpers escaping his graying muzzle. The cabin had grown surprisingly chilly overnight as temperatures plummeted into the low 40s. Elaine had fully intended to turn on the heat, but had forgotten in her frantic rush to respond to an urgent call about an injured barred owl the previous evening. Across the warmly lit room, Orion lounged with regal composure on his favorite perch, a custom-built shelf near the high ceiling that allowed him to survey his beloved domain from a breathtaking vantage point. His sensitive ears perked forward, keenly observing Elaine's slight, involuntary shiver. With silent, breathtaking grace, he stretched languidly, descended via a series of cleverly designed platforms tailored for his agile movements, and padded silently across the cool, hardwood floor. Elaine, deeply engrossed in her demanding files, didn't even notice him approach the unassuming thermostat mounted on the wall. With meticulous, almost deliberate precision, Orion rose onto his powerful hind legs, extended one delicate paw, and pressed the up arrow button 3 times. The ancient heating system hummed to life with a comforting whir. "Well, thank you." Elaine chuckled, finally looking up, as a wave of welcome warm air began flowing from the vents. "I was just about to do that myself." Orion blinked slowly at her, a profound feline equivalent of a gentle smile, before sauntering with effortless grace to the kitchen counter. There, he nudged his empty water bowl with just enough calculated force to create a clear, resonant ping against the cool ceramic backsplash. All right, I hear you," Elaine said, rising with a fond sigh to fill his bowl from the filtered water pitcher. These extraordinary morning rituals had become so wonderfully commonplace that Elaine sometimes astonishingly forgot just how truly unique they were. It wasn't until her vivacious sister Jennifer visited from the bustling city of Chicago with her energetic 8-year-old twins that Elaine was sharply reminded of just how utterly unique her unconventional household dynamics had become. "Aunt Elaine, is it true you have a real bobcat?" Max exclaimed, tumbling excitedly from the car before Jennifer had even fully parked in the gravel driveway. "A wild bobcat." His sister Maya, ever the precise one, corrected with unwavering authority. "Mom says he's super smart, like smarter than some people." Jennifer shot Elaine an apologetic look as she wrestled their overflowing luggage from the trunk. "I may have hyped up your unusual pet situation a bit too much. They haven't talked about anything else for weeks. He's not exactly a pet." Elaine explained gently, shepherding the wide-eyed children onto the welcoming porch. "Orion is a wild animal who happens to live with me because he tragically can't survive in the forest on his own. We have a special arrangement, a deep understanding." "Where is he?" Maya asked, peering eagerly through the screen door, her curiosity piqued. "Probably watching us right now," Elaine said with a warm smile. "He's quite curious about visitors, but he prefers to observe from a safe distance first." Cooper, the ever-friendly host, greeted them enthusiastically, his tail wagging in wide, joyful arcs as the children immediately lavished him with delighted attention. Jennifer, however, hung back slightly, glancing nervously around the rustic cabin. "Relax," Elaine assured her, her voice calm and reassuring. "Orion has never shown the slightest aggression toward humans. He's naturally cautious around strangers, but he's incredibly gentle, especially with children. Just let him come to you on his own terms." Their first breathtaking glimpse of Orion came during a lively lunch, when a tawny shadow slipped silently through the doorway of Elaine's cozy study. The magnificent bobcat froze momentarily when his piercing amber eyes spotted the unfamiliar humans gathered around the antique dining table, his pupils widening with undisguised interest. "Oh my gosh," Maya whispered, clutching her sandwich with white-knuckled fingers, utterly mesmerized. He's beautiful. Stay perfectly still, Elaine advised quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Let him decide what happens next. What happened next left even Elaine, who knew Orion's extraordinary nature better than anyone, utterly speechless. With measured, deliberate steps, Orion approached the table, his intense gaze fixed intently on Max, who was struggling unsuccessfully to tear open a small, stubbornly sealed bag of potato chips. The bobcat sat gracefully beside the boy's chair, reached up with one surprisingly delicate paw, and gently took the corner of the crinkling bag between his sharp teeth. With a swift, controlled motion that spoke of innate precision, he tore the top cleanly open, then backed away with a subtle air of accomplishment and settled onto his powerful haunches, watching Max expectantly. Did he just open that for me? Max asked, his young voice hushed with absolute awe. He did, Elaine confirmed, unable to suppress a wide, proud smile. He's incredibly observant. He saw you struggling and decided to help. That's insane. Jennifer murmured, her earlier apprehension completely dissolving into utter fascination. That's just the beginning. Elaine replied, a hint of playful mystery in her voice. Throughout the rest of the afternoon, Orion performed an ever-escalating series of truly impressive feats that left the twins squealing with unrestrained delight, and Jennifer constantly reaching for her phone to capture videos that she knew with absolute certainty no one back home would ever believe. When Maya accidentally dropped her favorite colored pencil under the old comfortable sofa while engrossed in her drawing, Orion not only swiftly retrieved it, but returned with the exact same vibrant shade from a spare set neatly organized on Elaine's nearby desk. While Max was meticulously building a precarious tower with well-worn wooden blocks, Orion watched with intense concentration before gently nudging a single block that was ever so slightly misaligned, preventing what would have been an inevitable gravity-induced collapse. But it was the remarkable events of the evening that truly showcased the breathtaking extent of Orion's extraordinary intelligence and his deep, almost uncanny connection to his unusual human and canine family. The vibrant autumn sunset came early, casting long dancing shadows through the cozy cabin windows as Elaine diligently prepared a simple, hearty dinner. Cooper, as was his endearing habit, had settled in his usual hopeful spot near the warm kitchen, patiently anticipating any accidentally dropped morsels. The children, their faces alight with innocent excitement, were carefully setting the table while Jennifer thoughtfully helped chop fresh vegetables for a colorful salad. It's getting awfully dark in here, Maya observed, squinting slightly at the silverware in her small hands. Before Elaine could even respond, Orion executed a breathtakingly graceful leap onto a sturdy side table, where a modern touch-sensitive lamp stood. With deliberate, almost thoughtful precision, he tapped his paw against the cool metal base 3 distinct times until the soft light brightened to its highest setting, bathing the room in a warm, inviting glow. He then proceeded to do the very same with 2 other strategically placed lamps in the adjacent living area. Did he just turn on the lights? Jennifer asked, the sharp knife frozen mid-chop in her astonished hand. He prefers good lighting, Elaine explained casually, as if discussing a quirky roommate's particular preference, rather than the astonishing behavior of a wild animal. He gets irritable if he can't see clearly after sunset. Later, as they all enjoyed their delicious meal together, a sudden forceful gust of wind rattled the old windows, sending a palpable chill through the cozy room. Orion's sensitive ears twitched, almost imperceptibly, at the sudden sound. He padded silently to an antique wooden chest nestled in the corner, nudged the heavy lid open with his strong nose, and gently pulled out a neatly folded, soft throw blanket with his teeth. Dragging it carefully across the worn wooden floor, he deposited it with gentle precision at Maya's feet, who had instinctively hugged herself against the momentary cold. "He noticed you were cold." Elaine explained, her voice filled with quiet wonder as Maya gratefully draped the warm blanket over her shoulders. "But how does he even know what a blanket is for?" Max asked, his small fork suspended in midair, his young mind clearly struggling to comprehend the impossible. "He observes," Elaine said simply, her gaze fixed on the remarkable bobcat. "He makes connections." After dinner, as they all gathered comfortably in the inviting living room for a lively round of board games, Orion's behavior grew even more astonishing, revealing the profound depth of his understanding and his deep bond with his unlikely family. He deliberately positioned himself between the aging Cooper and the two children, occasionally even serving as a surprisingly comfortable backrest for the old dog, who seemed to gratefully lean into his warm, sturdy presence. When Cooper's beloved, well-chewed toy rolled under a low cabinet, Orion immediately retrieved it, without any prompting whatsoever, gently nudging it back to the delighted golden retriever. "They're like best friends," Maya observed, watching the unlikely pair with wide-eyed fascination. "They have an understanding," Elaine agreed softly, her heart swelling with affection. Cooper was there for Orion when he was so tiny and vulnerable. And now Orion instinctively returns the unwavering favor. The truly breathtaking extent of Orion's extraordinary capabilities became undeniably evident the following morning, when Jennifer awoke to find the usually bustling cabin strangely silent. Assuming everyone was still peacefully asleep, she crept quietly to the kitchen, her senses craving the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee, only to discover a hastily written note from Elaine propped against the sugar bowl, her familiar handwriting filled with a sense of urgency. "Had to rush out, injured eagle brought in at dawn. Help yourself to breakfast, back by noon. Don't worry about Orion and Cooper, they have their morning routine." Jennifer poured herself a steaming mug of coffee and wandered sleepily to the window, where an utterly unexpected and deeply moving sight greeted her. In the soft, misty backyard, Orion was gently guiding Cooper down the slight slope toward the tranquil, small pond. The old dog moved stiffly, his arthritic joints clearly troubling him in the early morning chill. With remarkable patience and unwavering care, the magnificent bobcat walked slowly beside Cooper, occasionally pressing his strong body gently against the dog's side whenever Cooper seemed unsteady on his aging legs. At the pond's edge, Cooper lowered himself painfully to take a long, refreshing drink, while Orion waited patiently, utterly vigilant and attentively watchful, before carefully leading the arduous journey back toward the welcoming warmth of the house, always matching his pace to Cooper's slow, labored movements. Jennifer instinctively opened the back door for them, her freshly brewed coffee momentarily forgotten in her hand, her heart overflowing with a profound sense of wonder. You take such good care of him, don't you?" she murmured softly to Orion, who acknowledged her heartfelt words with a slow, deliberate blink, before gently guiding Cooper to his familiar, comfortable bed. What happened next left Jennifer fumbling frantically for her phone, once again, her mind reeling with disbelief. Orion approached a low, unassuming cabinet, hooked his sharp claws carefully around the small handle, and pulled it open with surprising ease. Inside, neatly arranged in clearly labeled containers, were various medications and supplements. The intelligent bobcat deliberately selected a specific container marked Cooper, Joint Tabs, AM, nudged it open with his nose with surprising dexterity, and carefully carried a single chewable tablet in his mouth to Cooper's bedside. The old dog, his eyes filled with trust, gently accepted the offering from Orion's mouth, chewing it with obvious appreciation before settling back down with a contented sigh. Orion then returned to the cabinet, closed it neatly with a nudge of his shoulder, and proceeded to Cooper's empty water bowl, which he then pushed deliberately toward the old dog, using his forehead. When the tousle-haired and still sleepy-eyed twins finally emerged from their slumber, Jennifer recounted the utterly unbelievable events she had just witnessed with the breathless wonder of someone who had just glimpsed something truly magical. Something she never in her wildest dreams expected to exist. Aunt Elaine said Orion is super smart. Max mumbled, still half asleep. But that's like superhero smart. It's more than just intelligence. Jennifer replied thoughtfully, her voice filled with awe. It's compassion. Throughout their week-long visit, Orion continued to utterly astonish them with further demonstrations of his truly extraordinary mind and his deep, almost palpable connection to his human and canine companions. He learned the children's daily routines with unnerving speed, appearing with Maya's hairbrush each morning before she even had to ask. He seemed to effortlessly anticipate Max's frequent requests for juice, strategically positioning himself by the refrigerator door whenever the boy showed the slightest signs of thirst. He successfully opened latched windows when the cabin grew stuffy, operated the remote control for the ceiling fan by pressing specific buttons with his surprisingly precise paw, and once most memorably unplugged Jennifer's phone charger when it began emitting the subtle telltale buzzing noise that indicates a faulty connection. But perhaps the most deeply moving and truly impressive aspect of Orion's remarkable behavior was his apparent, almost uncanny understanding of complex human emotions. When Maya became unexpectedly homesick, one quiet evening, dissolving into silent tears after a heartfelt phone call with her father, Orion approached her with something clutched gently and carefully in his teeth. It was a framed family photograph he had somehow retrieved from their unpacked luggage. He placed it delicately beside her, then pressed his warm, comforting body gently against her side until her quiet tears gradually subsided. How does he know? Maya whispered to Elaine later, her voice still thick with emotion. It's like he can read my mind. Not your mind. Elaine corrected gently, her eyes filled with warmth. Your heart. On their final evening, as they all sat comfortably around a crackling fire pit, sharing cherished stories and roasting gooey marshmallows, Jennifer finally asked the profound question that had been simmering beneath the surface of their entire transformative visit. Aren't you ever afraid having a wild predator living in your home? Elaine thoughtfully considered this, her gaze soft, as she watched Orion delicately extract a perfectly golden brown marshmallow from a long skewer. He had somehow cleverly learned to hold between his paws, offering it with gentle care to an eagerly waiting Max. I'm not afraid of Orion, she said finally, her voice filled with unwavering conviction. But sometimes I am afraid for him. What do you mean? Maya asked, accepting her own perfectly roasted marshmallow from the bobcat's careful delivery. The world doesn't always understand creatures that don't fit neatly into convenient categories. Elaine explained, her voice softening with a hint of sadness. Orion is neither truly wild nor fully tame. He's something in between, something truly special. My greatest fear is that someday someone might decide he doesn't belong here with us. But he is family. Max protested fiercely, unconsciously, leaning against Orion's warm, reassuring flank. Yes, Elaine agreed, her eyes filled with love, as she watched Cooper hobble over to join their cozy circle, settling down with a contented groan beside his unlikely best friend Orion. But not everyone would see it that way. 6 long months after Jennifer and the twins returned to the bustling city of Chicago, Elaine's greatest fear became a stark and terrifying reality. An anonymous, undoubtedly cruel complaint led to a sudden, unannounced inspection by stern-faced wildlife authorities, their expressions grim with preconceived notions about the dangerous predator, allegedly being kept illegally as a pet. Two imposing wildlife officers arrived unexpectedly on a blustery March morning, the wind whipping around the small cabin like an ominous warning. Elaine instantly recognized one of them, Mike Brennan, a notoriously by-the-book official who had never quite approved of her special permit to care for Orion. "We've received disturbing reports, Dr. Foster." Mike began without any preamble, his voice cold and official, "that you are allowing this bobcat to interact directly with children. That is a direct and serious violation of the strict conditions of your permit." "Those children," Elaine replied evenly, her voice betraying none of the icy dread that gripped her heart, "were my own niece and nephew. And Orion has never, not even for a fleeting moment, shown the slightest hint of aggression toward any human being. Regulations, unfortunately, do not make exceptions for familial relationships." The second officer, a younger woman named Torres, stated flatly, her gaze unwavering, "We will need to thoroughly reassess the animal's current status today." A cold knot of pure terror twisted in Elaine's stomach. Reassess was a chilling bureaucratic euphemism that often chillingly preceded forced relocation to a sterile wildlife facility. Or, worse, the unthinkable, heartbreaking possibility of euthanasia for animals deemed too habituated to the gentle touch of human kindness. Inside the cabin, Cooper, the ever-sensitive barometer of their emotional landscape, sensed the palpable tension, immediately whining anxiously from his comfortable bed, his old body trembling. Orion, in a small, fleeting mercy, was nowhere to be seen, having likely retreated to one of his secret, comforting hiding places, as he typically did when faced with unfamiliar strangers, especially those wearing the unnerving uniforms of authority. The officers conducted a meticulous, almost invasive inspection of Elaine's humble facilities, their sharp eyes noting every minor, insignificant infraction with disappointing thoroughness. Torres coldly photographed the carefully crafted custom shelves and ramps Elaine had lovingly built for Orion's comfort and well-being, with a specialized feeding station designed to mimic his natural hunting habits, the discreet cat door that led to his secure outdoor enclosure, a sanctuary built with painstaking care. Well, where exactly is the bobcat at this precise moment? Mike finally asked, his stern expression unyielding as he flipped through his ominous citation book with deliberate, chilling slowness. "He's likely hiding." Elaine admitted, her voice barely a whisper, betraying the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. "He's incredibly sensitive to unfamiliar individuals, especially those in uniforms." As if summoned by the raw emotion in Elaine's voice, a series of distressed, heart-wrenching whimpers suddenly emanated from Cooper's bed. The old dog was struggling desperately to rise, his frail back legs splaying uselessly beneath him, his aging body betraying him. In recent weeks, his debilitating arthritis had cruelly worsened considerably, and this particular morning seemed especially brutal, filled with agonizing stiffness. "Cooper, stay down, my sweet boy." Elaine called out, her voice thick with worry, as she moved instinctively toward him. "I'll get your medicine right away." But before Elaine could even reach the designated cabinet, Orion appeared silently, almost ethereally, from wherever he had been anxiously hiding. With all eyes in the room now fixed intently upon him, the magnificent bobcat padded directly to the familiar medicine cabinet, opened it with the now familiar, almost casual dexterity he had displayed countless times before, and deliberately selected Cooper's clearly labeled pain medication container. The officers watched in stunned, utter silence as Orion carefully carried the container in his gentle mouth to Elaine. placed it delicately in her outstretched hand and then returned to Cooper's side, gently nudging the whimpering old dog back into a more comfortable position with a soft, reassuring nuzzle. Did that just actually happen? Torres whispered, her previously stern official demeanor momentarily shattered by the sheer, undeniable reality of what she had just witnessed. Elaine, her hands trembling slightly, administered Cooper's much-needed medication, then turned to face the two officers, her gaze filled with a desperate plea for understanding. "This," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "is precisely what I have been trying to convey in my detailed reports. Orion isn't merely a bobcat I rescued. He is truly remarkable." Mike Brennan, the seasoned by-the-book officer, finished her sentence unexpectedly, his stern expression softening visibly as he watched Orion carefully and tenderly grooming Cooper's graying face with a gentle lick. "In my 30 long years of wildlife management," he admitted, his voice filled with a newfound wonder, "I have never in all my life seen anything remotely like this." What followed was an impromptu, utterly compelling demonstration of Orion's truly extraordinary abilities, not performed as cheap tricks for tasty treats, but as natural, unprompted expressions of his profound intelligence, and more importantly, his deep, undeniable connection to his unlikely beloved family. He subtly adjusted the cabin's thermostat when Cooper let out a soft, involuntary shiver. He retrieved Cooper's empty water bowl when the old dog whined softly, his throat parched. He even gently dragged his own soft, familiar blanket across the worn floor to carefully cover Cooper's aching back. By the time the two officers finally prepared to leave the small cabin 2 hours later, their ominous citation books remained conspicuously unused. "We're going to need to create a special designation," Torres said, her earlier bureaucratic rigidity completely replaced by genuine, heartfelt wonder. This entire case simply doesn't fit into any of our existing categories." "No," Mike Brennan agreed, his gaze lingering on the touching scene of Orion settling protectively beside Cooper, one strong paw resting gently and reassuringly on the old dog's frail shoulder. "He certainly does not." A year later, Jennifer returned to the cozy cabin in the Ozarks with the now slightly older twins for another eagerly anticipated visit. This time, however, they found the familiar cabin subtly yet significantly transformed. A small, dignified brass plaque now adorned the weathered wood beside the front door, proudly identifying the humble dwelling as the Orion Study Center for Interspecies Cognition, an official research facility generously sponsored by the State University where Frank Elaine's wise and insightful neighbor had once passionately taught. Cooper, their beloved golden retriever, had passed away peacefully the previous winter, leaving a profound void in their hearts, but his memory lived on, vibrantly in the hundreds of cherished photographs lovingly lining the cabin walls. The vast majority capturing the unlikely, deeply touching friendship between the old dog and the remarkable bobcat. A unique bond that had inexplicably touched countless hearts after Mike and Torres had bravely shared their extraordinary experience. Now Orion gracefully divided his time between being Elaine's cherished, irreplaceable companion and serving as the gentle subject of Frank's respectful, ongoing studies on the fascinating complexities of animal intelligence. Each astonishing new discovery about his remarkable cognitive abilities helped to slowly shape more compassionate and enlightened wildlife policies, fostering a deeper, more profound understanding of the intricate minds of creatures once carelessly dismissed as operating purely on base instinct. As the excited children rushed to enthusiastically greet their favorite bobcat, now comfortably sprawled in a warm patch of sunlight on the living room floor, Jennifer noticed something new and deeply significant. A beautifully framed letter hung prominently near the entrance, catching the soft light. It was an official document from the Wildlife Resources Commission, formally creating a groundbreaking, first-of-its-kind designation, Interspecies Ambassador. Below the formal official language and the multitude of important signatures, someone had thoughtfully added a small, handwritten note. For Orion, who reminds us that intelligence wears many forms, compassion knows no species, and family is often found in the most unexpected of places. Elaine joined her sister, her eyes filled with a quiet, profound joy, following Jennifer's captivated gaze to the deeply meaningful letter. Not bad for a bobcat with an estimated IQ of 200, huh? She said softly, a hint of playful pride in her voice. I'd say he's completely off the charts. Jennifer replied, her own eyes filled with warmth as she watched Orion patiently allow the children to proudly show him their latest artistic masterpieces, his intelligent amber eyes bright with what anyone who truly observed him would undoubtedly swear was genuine understanding and unconditional love. In the humble cabin nestled at the very edge of the wild Ozark Mountains, the lines between wild and domestic continued to beautifully blur, challenging long-held preconceptions and gently opening countless hearts. And at the very center of it all was Orion. Neither fully wild nor truly tame, but perfectly extraordinarily himself. Music fades out. A valuable lesson. The remarkable story of Orion reminds us to look beyond our preconceived notions and recognize the incredible capacity for intelligence, compassion, and deep connection that exists in the animal kingdom. It challenges us to redefine our understanding of family and to appreciate the unique bonds that can form between different species. Perhaps the lines we draw between wild and domestic are far more fluid than we ever imagined. What are your thoughts on Orion's extraordinary story? Have you ever witnessed an animal display surprising intelligence or empathy? Share your experiences in the comments below. If you enjoyed this heartwarming story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales of the animal world. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Orion's incredible story?